everybody. Welcome to another episode of What Lights Your Fire. Today we have Cameron Clarkson. Cameron is the founder of Book Blaster. Hey, Cameron, how are you?
Hi, Dee. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm the son of a math professor and a football coach, so I get a little bit of both. But my story starts, I was born in California, raised in the Twin Cities. So I went to undergrad at Howard. And so my story has pulled me from one coast to the other across my life so far.
Yeah.
But I am a passionate passionpreneur. And I know one of the things we talked about leading up to the conversation was the passion economy. I think a good place to anchor my story is in the passion economy and my journey to understanding what that is for myself and helping other people to realize what this moment in history is all about.
Wow.
I started using the term, I don't know what year it was, but I think Adam Davidson is going to get credit for coining the term because his book came out first. But Adam Davidson was the host of Planet Money on NPR, and he had a very interesting perspective on the passion economy. So his book came out in, oh, it's a few years ago now. But once I saw it, and I was like, oh, wow, other people are using this term too. This is a real thing. So I got on the wait list immediately and got it in the mail as soon as it came out.
Oh,
And it was a good read. But a lot of what was missing was the how to. So, how do I actually go from my passion to a viable business, whether that's a side hustle or a full-time thing, where like, how do I do that? And another thing that I'm passionate about in particular with that is designing digital businesses that align with your passion so that you can run them from anywhere. Because one of my passions just so happens to be travel. Now, that is not to say that all passion businesses have to be digital or have to be
right.
remote based. In fact, a lot of value is created locally. However, I'm passionate about creating systems that could potentially fit in a backpack. So, one of my first workshops that I started teaching was called Business in a Backpack. It was just all about how can you design a strategy to turn your passion into a digital business.
Wow. So I wish I would have known you like a year ago. It would have saved me some trouble. I feel like when people hear I'm passionate about this, and then they say, I'm passionate about this, but it's not going to make me money. Have you tried to have it make you money? And then I also hear if I do it and have money, then it's going to feel like a job and then I'm not going to love it anymore. Then is it really your passion?
There's a big difference between cooking for yourself and cooking for people that you love and running a restaurant.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
So there are definitely ways to hate it, but let's take that example. If your passion is cooking, if your passion is feeding people, then maybe starting a restaurant isn't the best thing, especially if your passion isn't restaurants. Like it's one thing, like I do love great restaurants and the world does need those. However, it's extremely difficult. And there are a lot of factors that go into the restaurant industry that are more about real estate, really, than cooking delicious food and great service, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. So if your passion is hospitality, maybe being a food blogger is something that's more in line with your passion and also a way to generate revenue. There are a few different business models that I recommend for the passion economy, and one of them is a directory. So you could, for example, create a directory of if you're. I just joined this group on Facebook actually, and it's all about smash burgers, in particular making smash burgers. But it just goes to show you the level of passion that people can have over this is not a cooking group. This is not a burger group. This is a smash burger group. And I forgot how many thousands of members it has, but it is this organized community of people who share passion for one thing. Like I'm sure that there are Democrats, Republicans, gay, straight, all types of people in
Mhm.
this group. But what you better have is a great appreciation for smash burgers. So maybe there are so many different business models within the passion of smash burgers. You can make smash burger t-shirts. You can make smash burger gear. You can make a smash burger blog where you compare smash burger recipes. You
Right.
can do a smash burger competition. You can do a smash burger food truck festival. There's so many different ways to monetize your passion
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily the most obvious, which I think would
Right.
be like, oh, I have to open up a food truck or whatever it is.
Mm-mm. No, and I love that because I feel like that's a struggle as well, is maybe I have a passion, but I just don't know how to express my passion because society tells me I have to open a restaurant or I have to do this or I have to do that. And that's overwhelming. So I love that perspective. So how did you figure out that this is where you want to go with your life?
I think it just is my passion. What I like to do is explore. I love building things and particularly software, but also building business solutions, building business systems. I didn't really realize that's what I like. I didn't realize that was what it was called, but
Right.
I like challenges. I've always liked challenges. I've always liked figuring out creative out of the box solutions.
Oh, yeah.
This entrepreneurship just afforded a way that made it meaningful for other people. It's like, yeah, we can all sit around, we can do puzzles, we can play chess. And I love playing chess. That's cool. But there is something very special about the challenge of living your fullest life, and helping people in that particular challenge is very rewarding for me.
I feel like anyone who's in the helping industry, that's why we're here. We're here because we want others to find joy in their life.
Most businesses are service businesses. I was just taking a service design class on Udemy, and it's very interesting when you look around at the businesses that are out there, and especially the ones that we encounter on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
They're service businesses. The lady who helps with our dog grooming, the person who comes by to do the roof, like all of these are service. And when you think about how to turn your passion into a business, maybe if you've spent your life doing something, and people have all types of jobs that they get exposed to processes that I have no idea about, like the level of minutia in the long tail of people's jobs, it's infinite pretty much, right? But if you've spent your job doing a particular thing, whatever that thing is, chances are you have built up a passion for it. And that passion, when people think about passion, I think there is a stereotype or a misconception, is probably a better word, a misconception of
Mm.
it being about do what makes you happy. And that's not exactly accurate.
Right.
What makes passion is really your ability to make someone else's work your play. And that it doesn't necessarily mean that you always have a smile on your face when you do it. It just means that you can talk about this for 30 minutes and everyone else around you wants you to shut up. Like that, you can tell you're dealing with your passion. Exactly. You can tell you can tell I'm passionate about this because
Yeah.
I can talk about it. But you can tell when your passion is your passion is are those things that light you up, to quote Dan Martell. And to quote you, what lights you up is what your passion is. So it doesn't necessarily what you do in your downtime or whatever else. So those are fine. It's not how you unwind or relax, but what makes you tick
Mm.
and what makes you go on and on, because really what passion is blood. And blood, I'll never forget my black political theory professor, Dr. Wright. He came into class and he would ask for the first 3 weeks of class, he just asked the same question over and over again. What is blood?
Yeah.
What is blood? And eventually we found out, we came to the conclusion that blood is experience. We share blood with people who share our passions. So when you shed blood on an experience, when you shed blood on hiking, when you've
Right.
gone on a hike, a real hike, and you really know what that's about. I don't know what that's about for real. But when you've shed blood on entrepreneurship and you
Yeah.
know what that's, and you have that experience, that's what passion is. It doesn't matter if you smile or
Yeah.
whatever you're doing. It's much more about that feeling you get when you're doing it.
Right. So I never looked at it that way. So thank you for that different perspective. So thank you for explaining that. So would you say authenticity really plays a big role in your passion as well, and of course other people's passions.
For sure. When we are honest with ourselves, I think
Mhm.
that's when we can really find what we are passionate about. And, authenticity is another word for honesty in my mind. When we are
Me too.
willing to be our most authentic selves
Right.
and feel what that feels like. I think that authentic self is a feeling and
Mhm.
a,
I
a,
do.
a place. So when we're in that place, what makes sense? And so that I think that is the only way that we can get there is by being authentic. And I think the beautiful part is what makes the passion economy so cool. This group of smash burgers. If you were not being authentic with yourself, or if the person who started that group was not willing to be authentic and they were just like, yeah, I
Mhm.
really like smash burgers. I guess I'll just join. There's some burger groups out here. I'll just join that group instead.
Yeah.
The world would be missing this amazing smash burger group
Mhm.
that is only by being authentic with our true selves that another person who sees that, oh yeah, not burgers, not juicy loosies, not whatever, burgers. And I share that passion. You're only going to get the other people that are going to put up their hand and say, yeah, that's a pain that I've also experienced by being authentic with your own pain.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so true because I feel like a lot of times we also don't really know what we're passionate about. And a lot of that I think has to do with the societal standards of what we're supposed to be. And then we have those limited belief systems. If I'm going to follow my passion, I have to make sure that I don't do this too much or I don't do that too much. And there's a lot of stipulations on it, and I really feel like you can't really do that with passion. And you definitely can't be authentic if you're watering yourself down to fit society either.
It's definitely harder. And when we start to think about the skills that are required to build cool things, you have to be able to think divergently, and then I think it's
Right.
convergent, hopefully. But you have to be able to think broad, and then you have to be able to bring it back home. So
Right.
if you are trapped in the economy where everything has to make logical, linear sense, the information economy, then a group like a smash burger group might not make sense. It's definitely outside the box. And then even when you have a group like that, how having a group like that is one thing, but being able to turn it into a business is a completely separate thing. You could monetize it with merchandise, et cetera, et cetera. But once you have the community of people, there are all types of ways to figure out what those pains are. And even if that pain is I am a diehard smash burger person and I can't find a mug, I can't find a coffee mug that represents my true personhood. I need a smash burger coffee mug so that whenever whatever that is for
Yeah.
you and whatever that problem is that you're solving. Something else that's very interesting is that people spend their whole lives doing jobs, and what they're passionate about might not be necessarily obvious. It can be something as I'm passionate about clean lines,
Yeah.
whatever that means to you. And,
I
and
know
when
what that
you
means.
dig deeper
Yeah.
into the why am I passionate about that, sure, you might come up with something a little bit more profound. But if you are passionate about beauty and just things not being ugly, or you're passionate about simplicity, that's an okay thing to be passionate about. Now, this is where layering your passions is important. Simplicity it's a great thing, but it's also a very vague, big, and broad thing. Turning simplicity into a business is difficult. Now, to have a passion for simplicity and to pair that with your passion for smash burgers,
Yeah.
perhaps it's a simple smash burger kit where everything that you need to make the perfect smash burger is all in one simple kit. And you've got, look, simplicity. Now, like you're compounding your passions and you're creating a solution to a pain point that is only visible to people who share your passion. It's cool. It's these things where it's like anybody who's outside of this community who shares this passion, it has no value. But
Right.
value is about price agreed upon between buyer and seller.
Right.
So if you are in the right community and if you are offering your product or service to the right group of people, then you have a great opportunity to turn your passion into a business livelihood.
Yeah, and I think you touch on something with finding those people, because I know personally I had struggled with finding my people. So there's been several instances over my career where either I would say it or someone say, "Oh, I just need my people," or someone would say, "Oh, these just aren't your people." So I went through my
Mm.
life. I was like, "Who are my people? Where are my people?" And now that I finally gave into my passion of helping people and trying to use my voice to help people, I'm finding my people. I know,
Yeah,
and it's an amazing feeling when you can
yeah.
share, you can have that meaningful conversation with someone about what you're both passionate about, and you both get it.
You have to show up, and I think that you're speaking truly about that. The pandemic was a terrible thing for a lot of reasons, but it was also a very interesting time because people were sitting down and had the opportunity to explore digitally in particular, spaces where they have common interests with people that maybe we're separated by time zones and oceans, but what binds us is our passion for smash burgers. I'm sure that group got a lot more members during the pandemic if it was already active, but groups like that all up and down the long tail of interests people were able to sit down and find their people, one because they were forced to, but by having those digital spaces available and people having the time to explore, there was a matchmaking period, and a lot of people found passions and found people who shared their passions. People were quitting their jobs all over the place, and it's not all causal, but it's definitely correlated. And it's important to look at how all of these different parts are moving together. But it's important to show up, whether that's in a digital space, and now that the world is back open again for the very most part, showing up in physical spaces, getting I Meetup is a tragic platform in some ways, but they've got some good things on there. There are some really good groups. It's just hard to figure out what experiences are actually going to be good just by looking at the platform, and that's just is what it is in my experience.
Right.
But Facebook groups, Meetup, LinkedIn actually has some pretty good events too. But showing up and being in the same room with people who share your passion, whether that's a physical room or a digital room, is such an important, simple step,
Right.
but it gets the conversation going, and you never know where it can go from there.
In your opinion, why do people not take that leap? Why do people not take the time to say, this is my passion and I'm going to find my people? Like, because I feel like there's a disconnect where that conversation doesn't even happen. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I think for the most part, we are conditioned and taught to believe that there is a correct path, or there are a few correct paths that we
Right.
can choose from, but it's a very limited choice. And when you start to pull back the constraints, it's scary. And when you start to think about what's actually possible, it's intimidating for people who have, myself included, always believed that there is a right way and a wrong way,
Yep.
and there's a way that's better than others.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is at the core of the culture, what Dr. Maureen Bunny would call the asili of Western culture,
Yep.
where it is a fear and scarcity based culture.
Yeah.
So even in our definition of economics, one of the first things that we're taught is that it's a function of scarcity. So if we believe that, then we're never going to be able to operate in the passion economy. The passion economy, by its own definition, it is based on the abundance of the passions that are out there. So yes, there are everything that's going to be automated and outsourced. That's already happening.
Right.
But as long as there are problems, which there are an abundance of problems, as long as there are people, there are going to be problems. So that's the beautiful thing about finding your people. Like there's always going to be problems there. You just have to get there. And wherever there are people present, there are going to be problems and there are going to be ways to improve. And with those problems come the ability to solve them. And that in the solving, we create value and we build businesses and build cool things and we do it all over again. So it's not necessarily what most people are conditioned to believe. It doesn't seem safe, especially if you don't have a roadmap. And even a terrible roadmap is better than no roadmap in
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
agree.
places, especially if you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
The lack of examples of people really breaking down this is how I go from a passion, a feeling, and I turn it into a viable business. There are people out here doing different types of boot camps, whatever else, but it's definitely not the mainstream culture of the US or Western culture.
Yeah, yeah, it's as I'm because I'm a coach and of course a business owner, and one thing that I've noticed honestly is the world's a little different than I originally thought. Because I when I first did coaching, I did it with a company, Coach Arya in India. And I was like, oh, I get all this is good. And then I tried to apply it to people here in the US, and it took a minute because it's like you said, it's different. That doesn't mean it's bad, it just means it's different. But if you look at American society as a whole, are we all happy? Are we following our passions?
And I don't think that's what we're known for. I think we're known for big cars, big steaks,
Yeah.
and big guns, but I don't think we're known for being happy. I don't think
No.
we're known for being fulfilled or even for living a
No.
long time.
And like, how does that make you feel? Because I got feels about that.
I, like Dr. King said, longevity has its place. Living a long life is, I'm sure, a beautiful thing. I'm blessed to have both my maternal grandparents still living. But if your quality of life is not what it could be,
Right.
then it's for me, there's more to life than just living a long life. I
Yeah.
think that the quality of the life also needs to be considered.
100%. I agree because the anything can happen, right? Like you can go outside and something and freak accident can happen and you could die. So like on your deathbed, are you going to be proud of how you lived your life? And that's one way that I look at it is my father recently died at 80 years old. And when he died, he didn't have any regrets. And, and he lived a long, long life. He moved over here as an Italian immigrant for the American dream. And he lived it. And he passed that down to myself and my sisters. And I feel like if people would look for the happiness and the quality rather than how much money I'm going to make or how much I'm going to do this or how many followers I'm going to get, and just really look at life like, what kind of life do I want? And what kind of life can I be proud of when I'm no longer in this body?
I agree with that. I think a lot of people also think that two things. One, that there's more time than there is, that they have more time than there is.
Yeah.
And two, that we need to earn the lives that we deserve as opposed to just deserving the life and then acting accordingly, living accordingly. So if we believe that we have to earn a life where we wake up and hear nature and go on a walk and live the dream days that would comprise the dream life, then yeah, if that's something, yeah, maybe when I retire, I promise you, if that's the way you think, it's not the way you're going to live when you retire either. The only way to start living your dream life is to start living it. So if when you sit down and you say, what does an amazing kick-ass year for me look like? And it's climbing mountains and doing some things that I probably wouldn't want to do. But if that's your jam, then you need to sit down. And a great book for this, I mentioned Dan Martell earlier, is Buy Back My Time, but he calls it preloading your year. And so if you can preload your year, preload your week, preload your day, all of a sudden, and it's just also like those videos on YouTube where the professor puts the rocks in the jar and then the sand and the pebbles, whatever, and like it's all about filling your life with the stuff that matters first, and then the
Yeah.
small stuff will fill around it. Corny, but
Good visual
also
though.
very real when you start to fill in your calendar. So it's okay, is health important to me? I'm going to put it on my calendar. And now there's that is a block of time that is dedicated to your health. So you can't whatever other things on top of it if you're being serious about your priorities. So once you start to really map out your days, I actually don't have time for these things that I don't like, whatever else, because my day is literally full of things that light me up.
And why wouldn't you want to live that way? If you have the ability to do that, why would you choose to not follow your dream or not follow just happiness in general? You don't have to just quit your job and have a brand new career to be happy. You just have to get to know yourself and know what does make you happy. And like you said, bring more of that joy in and get rid of the stuff that is not helping you and not moving you forward to who it is that you want to be.
Right. It's important to have people around that support you. I just saw Alex
Right.
Hormozy quote that you have to have somebody around you that believes in you sometimes more than you believe in yourself. And it's another Western trope. Believe in yourself. You just believe in yourself and no one else will. It's just that's overrated. You know, you have to have a community. You have to have, and especially if you're trying to go somewhere that you've never been before, it definitely helps to have someone who has been there to be able to see in you something that you might not necessarily be able to recognize in yourself.
And that's really the importance of having that shared passion with people or having that connection. Sometimes you need to hear that from other people and have that validation. Even though we will say, oh, I don't care what it thinks. You do, though. You do. We care about what other people think. If you look at social media and all that, like we want people to see us, we want people to tell us what they feel about us and everything else. But unfortunately, social media ends up more negative, I think, in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, it's a fine line between your audience and your network, your support system and your audience as
Right.
well. It's easy to fall into the trap of posting for a quick endorphin hit when in reality it's not really moving you
Yeah.
forward or towards the person you want to be. It's more
Right.
about being the person that you want to appear to be and not really being that person because you can't do two things at once, not really, and definitely not well. So if you are so focused on appearing a way, that's what you're doing. And what you're not doing then is being. So it's simple. When you're looking, you're not cooking, said chef.
I
So
like it. When you're looking, you're not cooking. Yeah, my husband actually loves to cook, and that's his passion is cooking because he likes the process of cooking. And I was like, "Oh, open your own restaurant." He was like, "Nope, not doing it."
there's so many other ways. If your passion is feeding people, like really, then community kitchens. There are so many ways. Having a coffee shop, like even
Yeah.
like a coffee shop is so much, in my opinion, a better business model than a restaurant. Food truck. If there's one thing that I recommend, if you just love being in commercial kitchens, playing with like fancy kitchen gear and just doing whatever you want in the kitchen, don't open a restaurant. Open a food factory and make a sauce, make a seasoning. And then that way, I've worked with a couple businesses like this. Their team lunches are them making pizza from scratch in the company kitchen because you have all the stuff there. You get to play around, but you're only responsible for making one product and making one product.
I think that's a solid business model, right? Do figure out what it is that you do really well and then refine it until it's exactly where it needs to be, and then you can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get to advice or wisdom. If you were going to go back in time in 10 years and you're going to talk to your past self. What does that conversation looks like? What kind of, advice can you give yourself?
I would have been finishing up at Howard, or in the middle of that experience as undergrad. So I would have encouraged myself to get into entrepreneurship sooner. And there's something very special about being a university student and you have access to so many resources that you don't once you leave the world. And even just the way people will look at you, like, oh, I'm a student. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, let him in. Like, he's a student. Like, you can do that type of stuff. And other than that, just like, who are you? Why? Being able to just throw a educational institution's name behind yours can help get you into spaces, get you access to grants, money, whatever,
Right.
pitch competitions where the only other people you're competing against are other college students. Like, are you kidding me? Do it.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage myself to double down on where I am because that's the one thing you can't. I can't get back. No matter how good I get at my job, no matter how much money I make, I can never go back and
Right.
start sooner.
You can encourage others to do it though.
So yeah, I try and pass this along as much as I can to
I
the
love
students that I work
it.
with.
Yeah. So what if you went 10 years in the future? So
Mhm.
what do you think that your future self would say to your present self about your accomplishments and congratulate you for?
That's a that's also an interesting question. I just did a 10-year flash forward kind of exercise. In 10 years, I'll be retired, um, making money or having to make money. But I'm never going to retire from being an entrepreneur. It's in my blood. So I'll be investing, advising, and being for other people, particularly young Black founders, what I needed now. So everything that I'm going through right now, as far as pitching investors, getting rejected by investors, getting some, but more no's than yeses, and more people who don't get it than people who do. 10 years from now, the types of platforms that we're building will be the norm and will be antiquated,
Okay.
but it's difficult to deal with the loneliness that comes with innovating, pushing, and trying to solve problems that haven't been solved before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's so much truth to that. I think whenever you're doing something new and different from the norm, I feel like there's definitely loneliness there because you're trying something new and people, they just don't get it. It's been wonderful. So thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Dee.